Welcome back to Unshaken Beyond Sunday. And as I do every week, I want to know how you're doing. Leave it in the comment section down below. Good week, bad week, doesn't matter. I want to know about it. On top of all that, also, welcome back to the forgiveness series. We're on part 3. And just as a reminder, part 1 was pray. And we went over in depth on how prayer affects how you forgive. And then part 2 was process those feelings. And even though that sounds a little woke or new age, it's a very important part. Now part 3 is deal with that anger. Process that anger. Very first, I can already hear you. I know we have more than one emotion. I get it. I understand. And I realize that when we're trying to forgive someone, anger isn't the only thing that we'll need to deal with. Again, I know this. I understand that. The reason anger is highlighted here is the topic of this lesson is because we can all relate to anger. And we relate to it in a very similar way. For example, if you wake up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night and on the way you stub your toe, everybody's been there, everybody's done that. We all understand that you're not mad at anybody. In particular, you're just mad. You're mad that it happened. You're mad that your toe hurts and so on and so forth. But I can also hear you saying we can all share the same sadness. But the difference between my sadness and your sadness can be two different things. Let's say, God forbid, my beloved dog dies. And if I tell you about it, sure, you'll be empathetic, but it won't bring you to tears. Just like if your pet were to die, sure, I would feel for you. I would be upset for you. But it's not the same for me as if it were my pet. Anger, however, is relatively similar to everyone. That's why anger is so important for us to understand in order for us to forgive. Now let's dive into this. Why is anger so important? Well, it's relatively simple. Remember that example from the last couple lessons that I did where I said that if you left food in the fridge and it gets pushed further and further back in that fridge, remember what I'm talking about? Then the first couple days, it's fine. You can take it out, read it, it doesn't smell, nothing. After the first week, though, you might be a little hesitant to eat it. Then after a month, if you were to open it, you better have your nose plugged. That's a lot like anger. We think that if we push it down, if we ignore it, then everything will be fine. When in reality, we are just making the situation worse as time goes on. Like that food in the fridge, the first few times you open it, it's fine, there's no smell. There isn't much effect there. But the more you push in there, the more you stuff that fridge, the worse it will get. Then one day, you'll open that fridge, you'll release that anger, and it will not be pretty. Before I move on to how this relates to us in our daily life, let's look at what the Bible has to say about all this. Turn with me, if you will, to Ephesians 4, 26 and 27. And like I've done before, I will at least have the Bible verse somewhere here for you to reference, but I'll read it to you. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. Let's put a pin in that one for 1 minute. Look with me, if you will, at Psalms 37, verse 8. Don't give in to worry or anger. It leads only to trouble. Okay, let's take these apart for just a second. Let's start with Ephesians. We see that it's normal okay even to be angry. But like we talked about in the last lesson, there is righteous anger and there is unrighteous anger. We see in this verse that it's talking about righteous anger. Be angry, but do not sin, and give no opportunity to the devil. It's telling us that anger in itself is fine, it's okay, but using it as an excuse to sin is not. Giving the opportunity to the devil to work in your life and against God's kingdom is clearly not okay. It also clearly tells us to settle our issue before the day ends. Now, pause. That doesn't mean you have 24 hours to fix whatever it is. That's not what it's saying here. What it does mean is that you're not supposed to hold a grudge. But turn with me back to Psalms there for 1 minute. It tells us not to give in to worry or anger, as it only leads to trouble. How many times has something happened early in your day and it just throws the whole rest of the day off? I can think of countless examples. Maybe for my younger viewers, how many times have you gone into school on a Monday, but you know there's going to be a big test on Friday that you feel you just don't stand a chance at passing? For me personally, it was literally any math test ever. But that's against the point. However, you'll go about your week, and as each day passes, the dread grows further and further. That's what it's talking about here. Don't give in to that stuff, because much like anger, it will cloud your vision and hinder your emotions and judgment. That's what it's talking about. Let me tell you a story that I hope will help illustrate this point. For those of you that don't know, I didn't have the best childhood, and it planted a lot of anger in my younger years that took a long time to come out. Now, when I left for the military, that anger was still there. So when I would come home on leave and visit the people that I told myself that I had forgiven, that I wasn't angry with anymore, that simply wasn't true. I was a person that I myself didn't want to be around. I didn't feel comfortable. I wasn't nice. I was a rude and mean person, finding moments in those interactions where I could say something that wasn't nice just to get back at them just a little bit, and so on and so forth. I was just all around a not very nice person. But when I went back to work, when I went back to the Army, I returned to being happy-go-lucky me, a nice person, relatively fun to be around, hardly ever rude, respectful, so on and so forth. And after many years of therapy and searching myself, it was made very clear to me that I had yet to process that anger from my childhood. Like that food that was stored way in the back of that fridge, the anger was coming out in foul and mean ways. Ways that I didn't like, and that made me into a person that I didn't want to be around. And listen, I know I'm not the only one that had a bad childhood. I know that I'm not the only one that had trouble with anger. But you see, that's the point. We all have times in our lives that we can remember where someone made us angry. And we thought that we had moved on, but every time we saw that person, we just got a little more angry over and over again. And at the time, it seems like for no reason. Sadly, even if you just see or meet someone for the first time that reminds you of that person, you instantly don't like them. That's most likely unprocessed anger. And if you're not convinced, let's look at a historical perspective. Go back with me, if you will, to April 1889. A baby boy was born to a not very healthy mother and a very abusive father. Fast forward 15 or so years, and that young man is a struggling artist in Vienna trying to get into a very prestigious school. But he gets a message that back home, his mother is not doing very well. He rushes home to find a doctor visiting his mother day in and day out to treat her. And out of the kindness of this doctor's heart, he's doing it for free to this very down on their luck family. And yet, the mother, sadly, succumbs to her illness. While fighting in that war with a lot of unprocessed anger, his group is hit with a gas attack and he is rendered temporarily blind. They bring him back to the hospital, and during his stay there, he hears that his side has lost the war and later will be heavily oppressed by the victors. Clearly, this young man has had a relatively hard life thus far. But because he didn't process that anger, he starts to look back on his life in some other events while he has time, and finds that his father was influenced by a Jewish man who abused him. The doctor who treated his mother was a Jew. The headmaster of the school that he attempted over and over again to join in Vienna was a Jew. The government of the day that replaced the one that lost the war was replaced with mostly Jews. He found what he thought was the cause of all of his issues. Now, 0 points for guessing who this man came to be. Hitler goes on to hate the Jews, and his actions are the direct result for the death of nearly 75 million people, military and civilian alike, due in large part to the fact he never processed that anger and found what he thought was to be the cause of all of his issues that made that anger. Turns out, he just had a dad that let alcohol do all of his thinking. And that doctor did everything he could. He also could have just came to the realization that he just wasn't an outstanding artist. And that the politicians, much like the ones today, just told people what they thought they needed to in order to get elected. And most of them weren't really Jewish. But that anger rotted into hatred. All right, clearly Hitler is an extreme example. But let's look at how actions like this in life go directly against the Bible, and not just for historical figures, for me and you, even today. Turn with me to Hebrews 10, verse 30, where it states, "We are not to hold on to anger and seek revenge." That seems pretty cut and dry to me. Don't hold a grudge and don't seek revenge. Hold on, though. Clearly, none of us are said historic figure. Clearly, none of us have plans to take over the world. So let's bring it back down to reality for just a second. If you've ever played a sport, you know that there is that one team that is your team's rival. Then on that team, you know there's that one person that you just can't stand. They're always getting in your way. They're always stealing your opportunity to score, so on and so forth. So when the next game rolls around, you know exactly who you're going after. Is that not a grudge? For my older viewers who have to get up and go to work every single day for what feels like the rest of forever, there is always that one person that performs that much better than you. That person who just seems to naturally impress the boss more and more every single day. Maybe they get the promotion that you were hoping for. So every time you see them, you get a little more angry. Is that not a grudge? You see, it isn't just extreme cases. We can find ourselves letting that anger breed hatred, breed grudges more and more the more we look at it. And sometimes it's without even realizing it. I've talked a lot about anger towards others, but what about anger towards ourselves? I can tell you firsthand, there are very few people that can make me as mad as I can make myself. Not to mention, there are few people who can make me as mad as quickly as myself. And I know I'm not the only one here. Anger with others can lead to anger with ourselves. If we are constantly mad at other people, it can begin to affect how we see ourselves. If you live in a house full of rotting food, eventually you will become noseblind to it. But I can tell you this, you're still going to stink. Your clothes, your attitude, it's all going to stink. Being angry at yourself can make you not see the little things in life that you do because you're angry. Then again, because you're angry, you make others angry, and that doesn't help anything. Not only is it important to handle your anger towards others, but also equally important to handle your anger towards yourselves. And again, I'm not innocent in this. I've been there, I've done that. However, one of the biggest ways to deal with anger for ourselves is to forgive ourselves. But that's another lesson. We'll get to that. So, what now? We know anger is bad. We've seen it in the Bible on several different occasions where we shouldn't be angry or we shouldn't let that anger sit. But we also see that it can be infectious and it can influence not only us, but people around us. So the simple question here is, what do we do? Well, before I tell you some things that I want you to know about what you can do, I want you to leave it in the comments below. What do you do personally to deal with anger? For me, I usually go on a walk, but that doesn't always work. How can you process that anger and try to not let it affect you as much anymore? First off, we're humans. I know, surprise, shocker. We are not going to be good at this in the beginning. Processing anything isn't easy. It isn't easy for you and it isn't easy for me. But it's important. Vitally so. But it's going to take practice. And some of you who have watched the other videos, you'll start to see a theme here. That all being said, a lot of times you just need to think about whatever it is that happened. And you may come to the realization that it's not that big a deal. But sometimes thinking about it isn't enough. In that instance, maybe talking to someone will help. Maybe getting it out there will help. Which leads back to step 1, which is pray about it. Talk to the one that already knows what happened and already knows what is going to happen. However, if there's big stuff in your life that has happened that is keeping you angry, and we don't need to talk about it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Hear me when I say this. It's okay to seek professional help. It's okay to not be able to do it on your own. It's perfectly fine to need another person who is professionally trained to help you. God has given those people that talent for a reason, to help further His kingdom. You and I are part of said kingdom. So seek help if you need it. Don't let that food rot on its own because you don't know how to deal with it. Listen to me, please. Seek help if you need it. Just because you can't process it on your own, just because you can't deal with it on your own, doesn't mean it doesn't need to be dealt with. As a matter of fact, it means that it's more important in a biblical and productive way. Now I know what you're saying. That's a lot of information and given to you in a very short time. I understand, I get it. And I'm sure you have plenty of questions. By all means, reach out. I'll do my best to answer it, and if I can't answer it, I'll find somebody that can. But also, go back in the video, rewatch some certain parts, rewatch other videos in this series. Maybe there's something in there that will answer your question. But understand this, we can only grow together. If you have a question, reach out. I guarantee you you're not the only one. My last couple videos have had hundreds of people watch them. I guarantee you you're not the only one with the same question. So don't be shy. Don't think somebody's going to judge you. If you have a question, reach out. So like I say at the end of every video, until we meet next time, stay unshaken.